For the better part of the last 2 decades, anybody looking to buy a small luxury hatchback could turn to the Audi A3. I say could because for the 2015 model year, the company is axing one of those doors. So are they throwing the baby out with the bathwater, or is the 4-ring brand onto something bigger and better? The A3 is offered with 2 engines featuring forced induction of the snail shell variety. There's a 1.8-liter turbo at the base, making 170 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque. Meanwhile, there's also a 2.0T, putting out 220 horsepower and 258 pound-feet. There's only one transmission here, Audi's 6-speed S-tronic dual clutch. For MPGs, the 2-liter car stickers at 24 miles per gallon in the city, 33 on the highway, or 27 on average. Pricing for the 2-liter model starts at just under 34 grand, including delivery, although the car that I've got here today costs roughly $10,000 more than that. As you might already know, the A3 is based on Volkswagen's MQB modular platform. Of course, that means that it shares its architecture with cars like the Golf and all of its derivative models. And some of the styling elements peek through to hint at exactly that. For example, the dual exhaust pipes are pulled directly from the MK7 GTI. Standard equipment on the car includes 17-inch aluminum alloys, although this car has the optional 18s, and you can upgrade to 19-inch versions if you prefer. Now, everything about this car fits in directly with the rest of Audi's lineup. In fact, the A3 now looks a lot like a shrunken version of the A4. Now, this is the Prestige model, which means that it gets the more aggressive front fascia and side skirts among many other options. If you're wondering why Audi decided to move away from the hatchback, keep in mind the A4 sold more than 5 times for every A3 in 2012. And why shouldn't they move to something that's more appealing? After all, Mercedes-Benz is starting to crowd the market with their new CLA 250. But that can't be the whole story, can it? Well, of course not, because we haven't even looked at the interior. So let's get inside and check it out. Okay, so first things first, this is a sedan, which means that the back seats have got to be a little bit worse than the previous hatchback, right? Well, you do give up about an inch of headroom in the back, but you also get a little bit more legroom thanks to the fact that, like the Golf, this again is based on MQB, so it's actually slightly larger than the vehicle it replaces. Because this is a loaded Prestige model, it is brimming with all of the options that Audi will offer. For example, you get adaptive cruise control, sport seats, and brushed aluminum inlays in the dashboard and also on the doors. Of course, none of what I just mentioned is a part of the standard equipment list. Still, it's really not that bad if you buy a car like that. For example, you always get leather seats, you get a panoramic sunroof, and you get dual zone climate control no matter which A3 you choose. Even though this is the baby in Audi's lineup, it doesn't come across as feeling particularly cheap. Audi does a great job of masking the less expensive surfaces. Sure, there are hard plastics here and there, but for the most part, they're pretty well hidden. And beside the Mercedes CLA 250, this car is leaps and bounds ahead in terms of general material fit, finish, and quality. The buttons all have a satisfying click. The bezels around the air vents rotate, and when they move into place, again, there's a really satisfying clicking feeling when you put them either all the way to the top or all the way to the right. Oh, and there's one more thing I got to tell you about. This car comes with Audi's new Mmi Touch System, and to you, that means that you're going to be able to do things like write with the tip of your finger on the new, larger dial that also has a touchpad. So, for example, while you're trying to enter an address, you can actually just use the end of your finger to write, let's say, H-O-M-E for home, and then it'll find the preset. You can also use your finger to direct the cursor on the navigation while you're looking through the map to go left, right, up, or down. Earlier, I said that this car is bigger than the previous A3, and it is. You might take that to assume that it's also heavier, but in fact, this car is actually about 100 pounds lighter than the previous generation. This car has the more powerful 2-liter turbo engine, and that puts out 220 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Now, Audi says that it's supposed to accelerate to 60 miles an hour in 5.8 seconds, and honestly, it's pretty quick. I don't doubt that that's true. Now, Audi also says that peak torque comes on at 1600 RPM, and I gotta say, I have to question that part a little bit because it doesn't really feel like it. Still, as soon as you get into boost, there's plenty of power, and to make it clear, this engine makes 50 more horsepower and 58 more pound-feet of torque than the 1.8 liter, and it only costs $3,000 to upgrade from the smaller to the bigger engine, and honestly, if there's anything you're gonna pay extra for in this car, that should be it. If you're keeping track at home, you might be thinking those numbers are exactly what Volkswagen has for the GTI if you pay for that optional performance pack. And you're absolutely right, because this is the same engine and presumably the same exhaust system, so you're getting exactly the same output. And that raises a question. Is this just a GTI dressed for dinner and without the hatchback? Nope, sorry, it just isn't. Sure, Audi offers its drive select system so you can stiffen up the steering and you can sharpen the throttle responses and change the shift points, but the fact of the matter is the suspension is still much softer in this car than in the GTI. And so it should be. It's designed to be comfortable and not necessarily particularly sporty. Speed bumps and potholes are a non-issue in this thing, and that's really nice while you're driving over rough, cracked pavement like I am right now. Up at high speeds, the cabin is nicely isolated, and you really don't get very much road noise coming through. And at that speed, the steering also stiffens up very nicely to give you at least a little bit more of a responsive feeling, even if the suspension is kind of squishy. You might be disappointed by that, but I've got to hand it to Audi for forcing separation between their more luxurious and their more sports-oriented models. With stylish sheet metal and Benz beating interior quality, the A3 is a standout product. Yes, it gives up some of the pragmatism of old hatchback models that it replaces, but it's hard to complain when the rest of the product is such a major improvement.